Okay, now it says that it's recording. Let's pray that that's the truth.
All right.
Okay. Good morning, Rabbi Ozur Bass.
Good morning, Rabbi Raskin.
It's so nice to talk to you on this beautiful morning.
It is. I see the beautiful sky in your background.
Yes, trying to enjoy the weather as we're hunkered down here. How's the life of a Jewish educator during these extraordinary times?
It's a little complicated. There's a high learning curve for everyone involved, for the students, for the faculty. Digital learning platforms are something that a lot of educators have been involved in for a long time, but traditional classroom teaching is really, those teachers haven't been engaged in digital learning. So we're doing a lot of what's called asynchronous learning, where the students and the teachers don't have to be there at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it's actually an exciting time to really experiment with new formats of learning.
These times have, forced us all to dig deep into our toolboxes and figure out new modalities to stay connected and to not only learn and teach, but also build community, which is why I think, the occurrence of Parashat Vayakel Pikude is such an interesting, timing for the circumstances that we find ourselves in. Are you sitting with anything in particular as you think about this parasha and how it speaks to our lives right now?
Sure. So, this idea of creating communities within communities, watching, for example, last night on Facebook Live and the other night, just as people are commenting and davening together, I feel like there's more opportunities to create community in very creative ways. And I appreciate that. I think the creativity that's been happening in so many different communities right now is quite frankly, it's really exciting to be a part of.
It really does, show what the possibilities are in some sense, even out of a bad situation. Some interesting learning and interesting developments are emerging. I'm kind of thinking about this issue of Shabbat coming on the heels of instructions to build and to create, and kind of that juxtaposition as we find ourselves, kind of in different places than we usually are when we're building and creating and working. And how does that redefine Shabbat, and what implications does that have for, Hamapil ben Kodesh L'chol, right? Sacred spaces and ordinary spaces, and everything is kind of jumbled up.
Yeah, so, we have to really rethink what our milacha is, what our work day looks like, and what our work week looks like. And, in the Parsha where it talks about that for 6 days you do milacha, and then on the 7th day you refrain from doing that kind of creative work, and you sit back and you enjoy it. What I love is that the next pasuk, the very next verse, zooms in on one particular form of melacha that is forbidden, one particular form of work that's forbidden, and that's lighting a fire. And I was thinking a lot about what is that fire, and why is it just about fire when there's 38 other melachot that it could have addressed. And when I think about my work and the work that I do with children and with adults in creating a school community, I think about my passion, and I think about, there are times when I sort of get a little dry, and that flame of my melacha gets a little weak. And I think that this time where we're sort of forced to reinvent our milacha, reimagine what our daily routine is a good time to really revisit those passions. What is that flame that keeps on going and keeps you inspired for 6 days, so that on the 7th day you can look back and say, wow, that was really tov. That was really good. I appreciate the flame that is what inspires not just me, but other people.
there's so much structure in the process of constructing the Mishkan. First this, then that. First this is built, then that's tied to it, and this is, you know, draped around it, and so on and so forth. And people have been talking about the need for structure in these times when we're kind of, you know, trying to figure out how to, you know, how to work and how to play and how to relax and how to be, you know, still be engaged. What are your thoughts about structure in, you know, when we're at home, you know, versus in the office or at school, and how
Sure.
structure can come and fill this space and again create distinctions between weekday and Shabbat?
We send out a morning video to our students every morning, now that we're not in school. And one of the things that I talked about in my morning video, Dvar Tefillah, was about Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings, and how that sort of outlines for us a morning routine. And the fact is, we all now have new routines. And this is something that we can really learn from families who homeschool, that there are ways of restructuring our day that can be really creative and different and outside the box. You know, this is a really great time to think about for our children getting off of screens and what it means to go outside and like look at a blade of grass, climb a tree, right? So the structure is important, but finding a new structure is just as important. It's sort of like, you know, this parsha is talking about this portable mishkan. So there are parts that need to be taken apart and rebuilt every time we move. So we're moving now, and let's take it apart. Let's actually think about our relationships that we have and how to reconnect in new ways.
That's great. That's great. There's another part of this fascinating story that I think has some meaning for us, and that is not only finding structure but also finding joy and finding hope. And I'm thinking about that midrash that Moses, when taking up the collection of materials for the Mishkan, accepted everything that the Jewish people brought forward except for the mirrors, right? And that Moses rejected the mirrors specifically that were brought by women, saying that those are items of vanity. We don't need that in the construction of the Mishkan. And then God comes in and says, "No, Moses, you're wrong. We should accept the mirrors because it was the mirrors that people looked at and reminded themselves of their you know of their beauty and their ability to connect with, in particular, their spouses, and to join with them and to create loving relationships and hope for the future, particularly when they were in Egyptian slavery." I just love that idea that, you know, everything can serve in some sense as a medium of hope and joy, but not always in the most obvious ways. What do you think about that?
So first of all, I like the fact that you retold the midrash without the obvious misogynistic overtones. I appreciate that.
Well, you know.
And I do appreciate the once it becomes more egalitarian. I love the idea of God seeing in midrashim, I mean in mirrors, something that Moshe misses, and that is that when we look in mirrors, we get to see B'Tselem Elohim, how we each are created in God's image. We can choose when we look in mirrors to see our imperfections, or we could choose to see how perfect we are. And, you know, that self-examination, as long as it doesn't turn into something narcissistic, is really important. And this is, you know, this forced time of being together in one space is a really great time for us to do the same thing, to do this self-examination, to really see how is it that each one of us are created in God's image. Because God, you know, God accepted the mirrors. God understands that. We don't always see that in each other. So, you know, to use this time to see ourselves as being reflected of God's creative power, God's ability to do good in this world and our ability to do good in this world, you know, it connects really beautifully into the fact that we're moving towards Pesach and Pesach preparation, because during the Seder, we're told to see ourselves as if we ourselves have gone out of Egypt. And this idea of self-examination and self-reflection and taking these moments to remind ourselves how beautiful we are, how beautiful our families are, but also how we can grow in our beauty and our inner beauty and our outer beauty to reflect more of God's creation and why God created us.
I love that. That's wonderful. And we have many proverbial mirrors all around us to be reminded of that.
Yeah, especially, you know, if you're living with teenage children, man, they'll be the perfect mirrors for you.
God help us, right? Janet, I woke up this morning thinking about the story of how the Torah is given really nowhere, right? In a wilderness, in a place that is not marked. You know, even though there are theories about where Mount Sinai may be, there's no confirmed location, at least not for the Jewish people. We don't go back to it. We don't revere it. We don't make it a pilgrimage site. And the idea that Torah is given really in the middle of nowhere so that it could be accessed anywhere. And this is an example of that we can bring Torah into our lives in so many different modalities and forms, and we don't have to be in the expected places in order to hear it and to receive it. So I want to thank you for bringing us your Torah today and for giving us a daily dose of Torah and wisdom. You are always a source of wisdom and love for our community. We appreciate you so much, and thank you for this time on which I'm sure is a very busy day for you as you kind of are organizing all kinds of new forms of learning for your students and teachers.
Well, it is a pleasure to take time out of so many emails to talk Torah with a great rabbi. So thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Have a great day.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.